But so in this session too, I'm going to talk to you about, we're zoning in on studying the Arabic for the purpose of understanding the Quran. And just so everybody again has a heads up, I'll try to keep these sessions shorter than 20 minutes, between 10 and 20 minutes at the most, okay? Because I do want you to remember some of these things that I'm sharing with you. This is not relevant maybe for everybody, but those of you that are interested in learning Arabic to help you understand the Quran, I think you'll find this discussion beneficial. Okay, so when it comes to learning any language, you want to be able to acquire 4 skills. Okay, any language that you're good at, you want to be able to say, I have 4 skills in that language. Those skills are reading, writing, listening, and speaking. I'll say that again: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And the way to organize those skills, like when you go to I used to study Spanish in high school, and I'm trying to learn some Turkish now. And at one point or another, I've tried to learn, several other different languages. When you go to a language class, your professor, your teacher will get you to say something, speaking. They'll get you to say, my name is this, or here's how you say hello, or here's how you say welcome, or here's how you say good evening, etc., right? That's speaking. They'll try to introduce you to the alphabet of that language. That's writing, obviously. They'll say something and expect that you understand what they said. That's listening, right? And then, of course, they'll put words on the board or in your textbook, and they'll expect you to read it in that language the way it's supposed to be pronounced. That's reading. I want you to take those 4 skills, reading, writing, speaking, and listening, and restructure them, reorganize them in your mind. Again, we're learning not Spanish or German or French. Actually, we're not even learning Arabic for a general purpose. We're learning Arabic to understand the Quran. It's a very specific purpose. Our entire study of the language is focused primarily first on a book, and then everything else in that language. That's secondary to us, right? If that's the case, then of those 4 skills, 2 skills become less important. In the beginning, at least anyway, they become less important. So speaking becomes less important, and writing becomes less important, because for the average Muslim who just wants to understand the Quran, they're not going to sit there and write Surah Al-Baqarah. They're going to read it. They're not going to write it. And even if they never learned how to write it properly, it wouldn't make a difference. They're not interested in writing first. They're interested in understanding first. So writing is not a top priority if you're studying Arabic for the purpose of the Quran, especially those of you that are trying to study this part-time. You have limited time to study anyway, and you want to make the most of every minute of effort you're going to put in to learn. Why would you spend time learning and prioritizing something that won't take you to your immediate goal, right? So writing is basically, you put an X on it in the beginning. We're not going to focus on writing. The same thing about speaking. I mean, okay, you know now how to say that the weather is nice today, or it's sunny today. So what? Like, how is that going to help you understand when the Imam is reciting the prayer, or when you're reciting the Quran? So your speaking skills are about you producing language, you producing words, and you expressing yourself. It's not about understanding the Quran. So as an early skill set, even though in a normal Arabic classroom, or any foreign language classroom, these are like top priority skills. You start with these. Like, if you don't have this, what do you have? That kind of thing, And even if your friends say, hey, you're learning Arabic? Yeah, say something in Arabic. And you're like, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So it's not impressive. If you're not learning to speak, then you can't impress somebody else that you've learned a new language. But we're not learning this to impress anybody. We're learning this so that we understand the Quran. So we come back to that. I mentioned 4 skills at the top of this session. I've reduced it now to 2 skills. 2 skills are gone. Writing is gone for now, and speaking is gone for now. So what's left? What's left is reading and listening. Once again, what's left is reading and listening. Now, even within reading and listening, we'll prioritize. By the way, focusing on 2 skills is way easier than focusing on 4 skills, isn't it? Like, your work's already cut by half. That's already the case. And now, so you're already in a much easier position to be able to get to your goal. And what you have to learn to get there, the road has been cut by several miles. So that's already motivating. But even within that, let's think about this. I like to think of reading and listening as input. Like, information is coming in, and you're processing that information. For example, if I'm listening to Arabic, I'm trying to process that information that it goes through my ears, and my brain's trying to make sense of what's being said. The same way, if I'm reading, my eyes are taking these words, and I'm trying to make sense of it in my head. That's input. But when you're speaking, Or writing, it's output. You're producing stuff, right? So for the purposes of understanding the text of the Quran, the sacred text, we're focused on input. We're focused primarily on input. Now, within input, one of them is a lot harder than the other. Listening is way harder than reading. Why? Because when the Imam starts reciting, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر, and they're not stopping for you and saying, Inna, by the way, do you know what Inna is? Let me tell you. That's the vocabulary. And like, let me slow you, because you're a new Arabic learner, so I'll recite extra slow for you. So I'll just say, Inna. Everybody got that? Okay. أعطيناك. You good? You good? Okay, I'll go with it. That's not going to happen. They're going to keep going. You're still stuck on the first word. They're done with the surah. Allahu Akbar. Listening requires that you have the ability to process what's being said quickly, and you're keeping up with what's being said. And that's going to be a lot harder skill to acquire. That's not going to come right away. But when you're reading something on your own, that's on your own pace. You're not dependent on the pace of another. If you're going to take 10 minutes to recite Surah Al-Fatiha, that's up to you, because it's on your terms. So starting from reading is actually way easier than starting from listening. We want to start from the reading and then build our way up all the way to listening. Listening is our goal, really. I mean, I want to get to the point where I'm listening to the Imam recite the Quran and I can just make total sense of it until the rak'ah comes to an end and I'm engaged with the words of Allah. That's a final skill. That's like when you've reached your goal, kind of. In your study of Arabic, that's a pretty major milestone. It's not the highest milestone, but it's a pretty major milestone when you can stand in prayer and understand even one phrase or two phrases. You can start picking things up. That's pretty cool. And, we can start getting there soon, but eventually you want to get to the point where anything you recite, maybe one or two words you're missing, and then you can look those up. Or you can ask the person who led the prayer, hey, what did you mean by, what word is that? What surah was that from? And you can find that out and build that vocab. In any case, so I've started with 4 skills, once again, because I want you to remember this stuff. We started with the output skills, writing and speaking, and we eliminated those for the purpose of Quran study. Then we talked about listening and reading, and we eliminated basically listening for now. We'll build it slowly, but reading is where we're going to focus. You're going to read the Quran and try to make sense of what you are reading. And that's cool. That's actually a pretty easy way to narrow down your focus. Okay, so that's the first and foremost part of the discussion today that I wanted to get out of the way. Don't worry about vocabulary. Stop stressing yourself out about vocabulary. It will come. I promise you it will come, and you'll be very good at it. And actually, the vocabulary of the Quran is easier than most of the vocabulary of Arabic. If you were learning Arabic to understand the Al Jazeera network, you'd have a much harder time. Much harder time. But if you're learning Arabic for Quran, it's way, way easier. But your starting point is not vocabulary. Your starting point is to conquer the hardest part of Arabic, it's grammar. It's structure. And grammar is scary even for English speakers. My God, if you told somebody I'm going to teach you English grammar, I'd rather get a root canal than learn English grammar. Grammar is not a fun thing to learn. But crazy enough, I've made a career out of making grammar fun to learn. And Arabic grammar is actually pretty mathematical and a lot of very logical and surprisingly fun to learn if you have the right approach. For any of these 10-day milestones that we have, if you have the right pathway, if you have the right course and curriculum, and if you have the right teaching method, those 2 things are key. You can't just have which book should I study? Books are just information. It's what method will I use to teach that book, right? The method has to be right for a student to be able to really retain their stuff. So it's not just about getting a book and going through it and you'll get it. The curriculum is important, but equally important is the teacher. If you can have a combination of those 2 things, you will get to your goal successfully. And that's what I recommend doing for those of you that are able to read and want to progress that way. The second thing is clear objectives. Now that we're worried only about reading, let's get clear about our objectives. If you are someone, and I'm only going to talk about 3 groups today, right? And then we're going to be done with the session. First group, if you're somebody who knows absolutely zero about the Arabic language, you know nothing about the alphabet, you know nothing about, the pronunciation, you're absolutely zero, Okay, you know nothing. Or you're someone who used to know and now you've forgotten. Okay, now you don't remember what it was, or you read it so poorly you're almost embarrassed to read it in front of somebody else, right? Or even to yourself out loud, you feel hesitation in doing that. Then, and many of you, if that's the beginning level you're at, it's going to be hard for you to go to a masjid and sit down with a bunch of like 11-year-olds and they're reading better than you are and you're sitting there embarrassing yourself. It's going to be hard, right? And where do you begin with that skill? I mean, you could maybe take a college course. College courses are pretty expensive. And also, when you go to a college course, they're not going to say, we're just going to focus on reading. They're going to say reading, writing, speaking, listening. There you go again. I'm focused on 4 skills where I needed to focus on 1. That's another problem. You could try to do this on your own, and that's going to be a challenge. And sometimes you try to do it with a tutor online. Many of you have tutors online, and for some of you, it's a hit or a miss. Sometimes you make it, sometimes you don't, and sometimes they're pretty good. A lot of times because they're foreigners themselves, they want to take you on a pace that they're used to, or that they're used to teaching kids, and kids don't learn the same way as adults. Kids are sponges, they can pick things up quickly, but you're 35 years old, you're 27 years old. You're not going to be able to pick up as quickly as children, and now you start feeling inadequate and you get demotivated. I take you back to the first challenge. If you're not motivated, you're not going to learn.